Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever wondered why the United States can send its military almost anywhere in the world within just a matter of hours? Or why so many countries think twice before confronting America directly? Is it just because of money? Or is there something much, much bigger behind all that military power? Today, we are going to objectively break down the concrete facts, the data, and the strategy that make the U.S. military the most powerful force on Earth. Now, it's super easy to just assume that global dominance is all about having the biggest sheer number of troops, right? Just a numbers game. But as we'll see, the reality is much more complex and, honestly, a lot more fascinating. We're going to explore the real reasons behind this power through the lens of technology, logistics, and global influence. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the trillion-dollar defense budget, move into air, sea, and tech dominance, followed by global reach and logistics. Then we'll cover highly trained personnel, intelligence and alliances. And finally, we'll ask the big question, is America invincible? All right, let's jump right into part one, the trillion-dollar defense budget, which is truly the foundation of modern military power. Because the first reason is pretty simple. It's money. Just look at this staggering figure, $954 billion. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, that's the projected U.S. defense spending for 2025. To put that into perspective, it accounts for about 3.1% of the U.S. gross domestic product. That represents roughly one-third of all global military spending combined. It's the massive engine that funds the research, the advanced weapons, and the global operations. And the financial gap here is just massive. The U.S. literally outspends China and Russia, and actually the next several countries combined. From tanks that cost millions to fighter jets with jaw-dropping nine-figure price tags, this funding fuels the entire machine. But hey, spending alone doesn't guarantee success, right? The real advantage lies in exactly how that money is used. So let's move to part two, air, sea, and tech dominance, and see how that money transforms into cutting-edge capability. Take a Navy carrier strike group, for example. The U.S. Navy maintains 11 of these active aircraft carriers. And think of them like self-contained floating military bases, surrounded by destroyers, cruisers, and attack submarines. Here's a wild fact for you. Because they are nuclear-powered, these carriers can operate for over 20 years without ever needing to refuel. That allows them to project immense air and sea power anywhere on Earth, virtually without limits. And up in the air, the comparison is just as stark. The U.S. Air Force operates over 13,000 advanced aircraft, giving it total control of the skies. We aren't just talking about basic planes here. We're talking about massive fleets of F-22 and F-35 stealth fighters, plus long-range bombers. When you compare that to competitors like China, who operate around 3,300 aircraft, the numerical and technological gap is incredibly clear. Of course, this dominance absolutely extends to the ground, and increasingly, the digital realm. It's not just about having thousands of heavily armored M1 Abrams tanks. It's a highly connected web of advanced technologies working together. We're talking sophisticated satellites, advanced unmanned drones, cyber warfare capabilities, and artificial intelligence for surveillance. These systems literally give commanders faster decision-making and better intelligence than any competitor on the battlefield today. Which brings us to part three. Global reach and logistics, or basically the ability to actually transport and sustain all these forces. Because let's be real, all that cutting-edge hardware is completely useless if it can't get to the fight. Since World War II, the United States has built up an incredible infrastructure of hundreds of overseas military bases. In fact, experts often describe logistics as the U.S. military's single greatest advantage. Whether it's moving troops, aircraft, ships, or crucial supplies during an emergency, their ability to project power globally is just unmatched. Moving right along to part four, highly trained personnel, because technology is only ever useful when you have expert operators. Exactly. The tech is only as good as the humans behind it. The military leans heavily on something called force structure. Think of it kind of like a giant manufacturing process. The Department of Defense takes inputs, like that massive budget and its new recruits, and works to convert them into actual, highly capable combat units. And doing that requires massive, continuous investment in professional training, joint exercises, and leadership development. Now, if we just look at raw manpower, the U.S. has about 1.3 million active duty personnel compared to China's 2 million. So while countries like China or India have much larger absolute populations to mobilize, the U.S. intentionally focuses heavily on quality over quantity. Active duty personnel regularly train for every single environment you can think of, land, sea, air, space, and cyber operations. And this quality-first strategy relies heavily on elite, specialized units overseen by Special Operations Command. Think groups like the Navy SEALs and Army Green Berets. What's really crucial to understand here is that these operators aren't just running direct combat missions. They act as massive global force multipliers by training friendly foreign militaries all over the world, which extends American influence far beyond its own borders. This ties perfectly into Part 5, Intelligence and Alliances, and the incredible power of geopolitical partnerships. You see, military strength isn't only about soldiers and weapons. The scholar Joseph Nye calls this smart power. It's the idea that sheer military might, or hard power, is vastly more effective when you combine it with the legitimacy of shared global values, culture, and alliances, which is your soft power. Leading multilateral alliances like NATO builds this massive reservoir of influence that deters adversaries, ideally without ever having to fire a single shot. And we see this smart power in action all the time. Just take a look at this recent joint declaration. The U.S. greatly benefits from growing partnerships, like those with Australia and India in the Indo-Pacific. Through things like joint maritime security, intelligence sharing, and interoperability exercises, the U.S. and its partners weave this incredible web of security that vastly outweighs what any single nation could ever achieve on its own. So that leads us to our final section, Part 6. We have to objectively ask, is America invincible? Let's examine the vulnerabilities of modern warfare. Because despite all these enormous capabilities, no military is completely unbeatable, and the data clearly shows some real vulnerabilities. For instance, did you know China actually leads the world in total naval vessels? They have around 750 compared to the US Navy's 440. Plus, Russia maintains a numerical advantage in artillery systems. Furthermore, America's amazing airlift capability depends entirely on having access to foreign airfields. Add in the rising threat of asymmetric warfare, like cheap drones, complex cyber attacks, and economic pressures, and you have threats that bypass traditional hardware altogether. And recent history reminds us, time and time again, that massive budgets and fancy stealth jets simply do not guarantee victory in every conflict. When you're fighting unconventional wars or facing non-state actors in complex political environments, sheer firepower just isn't enough. Strategy, global alliances, public support, and long-term planning matter just as much as having the most advanced aircraft carrier. So why is the U.S. military often considered the strongest in the world? Ultimately, it's because it uniquely combines massive defense investment, cutting-edge technology, global logistics, highly trained personnel, and incredibly powerful worldwide alliances. But as warfare shifts increasingly away from the battlefield and into cyberspace, economics, and artificial intelligence, I'll leave you with this to ponder. Will having the biggest aircraft carriers remain the ultimate trump card in the decades to come? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today, and keep questioning the changing world around us.